Hey everyone, you're listening to Fantasy Uptick. I'm Jeremiah Blue, and today we're going to be going into the second round of our rookie mock draft. This is a continuation from yesterday's video where we broke down the first round. I'm once again joined by my producer, Brandon Hickle. How you doing today, Brandon?
Not bad, man. Just looking to get into the second round, and shall we start?
Heck yeah.
All right, number one pick coming off the board is Brandon Ayuk, wide receiver out of Arizona State. 25th overall pick by the San Francisco 49ers. This guy's got huge catch radius, and he's a playmaker with a ball in his hands. How do you think he fits there in San Francisco?
I think that was a great landing spot for him. I did think he was going to project as a second-round pick, so I figured he was going to go in the second round. But the 49ers, you can't ask for a better position based off what his skill set is. He's a yards-after-catch machine. So having an offensive coordinator like Kyle Shanahan there is going to be great for him. The only concern with him is being on the 49ers. They're kind of a run the ball, control the clock, play good defense kind of. So I think he's capped a little bit there. Similar to what I'm going to say about the next guy, Justin Jefferson, but what I already said in the video dealing with Justin Jefferson. The Minnesota Vikings, they want to run the ball, take the air out of the ball. They're not going to be throwing the ball all over the field, and I don't think that's going to be the case here with the 49ers either. Jimmy Garoppolo kind of projects long-term to be one of those game managers based off his fit. Now, maybe one day he turns into what Matt Ryan was under Kyle Shanahan a couple of years ago, the year they went to the Super Bowl. But as long as their defense is playing like that, I think they're going to try and keep the ball on the ground. And Kyle Shanahan prefers to run the football whenever he can.
Right. All right, moving on. Justin Jefferson, wide receiver from Minnesota. Stephon Diggs is gone. He's in. He played primarily out of the slot in college. Kind of an odd choice with Thielen still being there. What are your thoughts?
Well, it's a misconception that Thielen actually runs out of the slot. He just happens to run a lot of those short crossing routes because Diggs was the guy who would take the top off the defense typically.
Right.
But they really don't run very many three receiver sets at all, so there is no slots. They actually ran three receiver sets only 18% of the time last year, and in those times, Thielen didn't usually play in the slot. Two receiver sets, they run about 53% of the time. One receiver sets, they run 27% of the time. So majority of the time, there's only 2 to 1 receiver on the field. They want to run the ball. Similar to what I was saying with Brandon Ayuk. The thing with Jefferson is I think he would have fit better in a place where he could have run out of the slot. So I don't think this is a good landing spot for him. Even though he's going to be a starter immediately, there's no one who's going to really challenge him for any of those snaps because the Minnesota Vikings don't really have anybody else worth anything on that roster. So I do think that Justin Jefferson's got a high floor. I think his ceiling is low because even if we look back last year, and again, I talk about this in the video where I break down Ruggs, Jefferson, and Rieger, but even if you go back to last year, Stephon Diggs, he played all 15 games, and he really only got 1,130 yards, and that was with Thielen missing 6 games and most of a 7th game, and a big chunk of his yards came from those games. He had a lot of big games in the time that Thielen was out.
Right. All right, moving on to number 3 pick. I chose this one, T. Higgins, receiver out of Clemson. Going to play for Cincinnati. He's coming into a crowded receiving core, but, with Green and his contract, I don't know if he's going to sign next year. I think he can step in, fill that role, and going to have time to develop with Joe Burrow. So moving forward, I think could be good.
Yeah, no, that was a solid pick. I didn't have Higgins there. I like the guy that I got, Keyshawn Vaughn, but Higgins does project well from the long-term dynasty aspect based on the fact that he did get drafted there with Joe Burrow. A.J. Green is on the way out. Even if he does sign, he's getting older. He's eventually going to retire. But I don't know that the weapons that they currently have, that they would go and repay Green to stick around. My concern is that they do. And then I don't know where Higgins really fits in. Although he can move around, my issue with Higgins is he lacks the ability to separate. At least that's the way it looks on films. And he beat up on a lot of the lesser talented defenses and struggled a little bit with the better defenses. But he's got some great hands. He's got the ability to really catch the ball like the mossing is what the kids are calling it. Like where he just goes up, gets the ball, takes it out like he was playing a bunch of kids. He's a huge receiver. He's got the ability to go up and get the ball when he's covered, But my question is, in the NFL, can he create separation to allow Burrow to get him the ball? But it's a good landing spot for him because Burrow, even in college, doing the back shoulder throws, I think he actually made Justin Jefferson really good based off his ability to make throws like that, which a lot of times coming out of college, they're not ready to do that. If he's already doing that in college, I think that translates to him doing something like that once he gets to the NFL.
Right. All right, with the number 4 pick, Zach Moss, our first running back here in the second round. 86 overall, picked by Buffalo. He's a downhill runner. He's got some speed. He's going to have some touchdown upside due to goal line usage, and I think he could push Singletary back into a change of pace back and assume that Frank Gore role. What do you think?
Yeah, he's being brought in to be the Frank Gore role. I don't think that Singletary is going to ever be kind of pushed out of the offense, but this is going to be more of a 50-50, I think. More than people realize. I think a lot of people are thinking that Devin Singletary, after kind of blowing up towards the end of last year, it's basically his job and nobody else's. But Zach Moss, even though he went a little later, he was the last great running back or good rookie running back to come off the board that I was kind of afraid of in my dynasty leagues. Like I've said before, I have Leonard Fournette on my roster, my dynasty roster. And as the Jaguars were coming up, I was like, for sure they're going to take Zach Moss because they're trying to replace Leonard Fournette. So when he went past them, I breathed a sigh of relief because that's how much I think of Zach Moss. I actually think he compares very favorably to David Montgomery from last year. He led the NCAA, according to Pro Football Focus, in breaking tackle rate. So the rate of breaking tackles. He's a hard guy to get down. He's pretty elusive. He's slow, but Devin Singletary is not fast. So, I mean, he's bigger. He just projects to be the better running back, in my opinion. So I think he ends up eventually becoming more of the lead dog than Devin Singletary is. I think this is a good spot for Zach Moss.
All right, cool. Number 5, Keyshawn Vaughn, running back out of Vanderbilt, goes to Tampa Bay. Could be another weapon for Tom Brady here. Could compete with Ronald Jones for early down role. What do you think there?
Well, this is my rookie man crush because I love this guy. I already did my first video of the year right after the draft that this was the biggest winner because he lands in Tampa. And Ronald Jones is not a good running back. He's just not a good running back. And now that Brady's there, they're going to want to get a guy in there who can pass protect. And Ronald Jones is awful in pass protect. Keyshawn John ranked as one of the top 3 pass protecting running backs coming into the draft. He's a good receiver out of the backfield. He's just one of those guys that's a little bit good at everything. He's not overly fast. He's not overly powerful, but he's pretty good at everything. And I think he's going to end up running away with this job because I think he's going to do a better job of keeping Brady upright, which is going to get him on the field because if you even look at last year, Ronald Jones was head over heels better than every single running back on that roster, and he still only managed to be on the field, so snap count percentage, 36.4% of the time. Keyshawn Vaughn is better than all the guys that were on the roster last year, so I think that they really just don't like Ronald Jones being on the field unless they're just going to hand it off to him, and then that puts such an advantage on the defense, knowing that when Ronald Jones is there, he's either going for a little short pass or he's running the ball. He is not going to stay back to pass block because they're not going to take that kind of risk. So Keyshawn Vaughn's going to be on the field more. It's going to allow Bruce Arians and Tom Brady to do more with that offense.
Right. All right, at the number 6 spot, we got Denzel Mims, wide receiver for the Jets. 59th overall pick from Baylor. Looked to be a day 1 starter. Number 1, could be a pretty big target for Sam Darnold. What do you think?
Well, coming into the draft, I really liked Denzel Mims. I thought he was going to go over a couple of guys like T. Higgins and some of those guys. I thought he was going to be early second round. He fell pretty late, which clearly they're missing something on the film, or I'm missing something on the film that a lot of other people saw. Now, granted, he still went late second round in a draft where there was a lot of receivers, right? So obviously there was something to like there. But I really didn't see any flaws with this guy on film. I thought he had great hands. He was decent enough in route running. He wasn't like the best of the class like Jeudy, or he wasn't the biggest of the class. He was just good all-around player. I thought he landed in a good spot where he's going to basically step in day 1 and have a role in the offense. Maybe not number 1. I still think Crowder ends up being more valuable receiver next season, but he's going to step in day one and have a valuable role with Sam Darnold, and he's going to be able to grow with Sam Darnold. The couple of key notes I'll have on Denzel Mims was he was like the highest graded receiver at the Senior Bowl by a lot of the experts. So, I mean, that to me says he was doing it once he got to the Senior Bowl and doing it amongst the elites of the college class, right? All the seniors are there. So the fact that he was able to excel in that environment tells me something about him. And on film, what I did notice a lot was his aggressiveness. So he's probably going to get called for a lot of pass interference offensively, but there's a lot of guys like that, like DeAndre Hopkins, who don't get called nearly as much as they should be getting called for offensive pass interference. So I think at the end of the day, there's a lot of people who make their living on that. I think he's going to be one of those guys.
All right, moving on. Number 7, Ylvis'koosh Shenault Jr., wide receiver for Jacksonville, out of Colorado. What do you got on this guy?
When I came up on pick 5 and I took Keyshawn Vaughn, which again, I already talked about how much I love Keyshawn Vaughn, it was between him and Shenault, because Shenault, to me, I just have a theory on Shenault, and it's a conspiracy theory. Not really. It's basically, I think that he's going to end up being brought in to play more running back than I think people realize. I think that obviously he's got a role as a receiver, and worst case scenario, I'm wrong and he becomes a good receiver because he projects to be a good receiver. But Jacksonville's been talking about getting a running back to pair with Leonard Fournette. Now, they brought in Chris Thompson from the Washington Redskins, and I think that Shenault actually projects to be a very Ty Montgomery type player, where he played receiver in college. He was brought in as a receiver, but he can transition to that running back based on his size and his ability to break tackles. He's a good return man. He played Wildcat quarterback. Jay Gruden's already said that he's going to have him all over the field. So I really think that this might be a sleeper that ends up turning into like a David Johnson, Ty Montgomery, one of those guys. This guy's really high for me on my draft board. I got him right behind Justin Jefferson as far as receivers go in the draft.
All right, sounds pretty good. Number 8, Antonio Gandy-Golden, wide receiver for Washington, 142nd overall pick by the Redskins. Going to come in behind McLaurin, Steven Sims. Their offense is projected to be kind of at the lowest part of the league in passing. What do you think about this?
I like this guy, but this was a bit of a reach. I would have taken Michael Pittman Jr. over him at this point. But I'm currently going to Liberty University, so this is a guy that I'm going to be rooting for, even though he's at Washington, and I'm obviously a Cowboys fan. But he projects, I think he's going to take over the number 2 role pretty quickly. He projects to be that big guy that they don't really have on the roster, who's going to be the touchdown dude, the guy, the jump ball guy, the back shoulder guy. So I think he's going to step in immediately, have a role. He's 6'4", 220 pounds. He's got the size. He's got the hands. But he played at obviously lesser competition in college. So we're going to see how that translates to the NFL and how long it would take. And again, that's why I feel more comfortable going with guys like Michael Pittman Jr., even Van Jefferson over a guy like this, just based off of I think they're going to have a role and they've already proven it to better competition. But I do like him.
Right. All right, number 9, kind of an interesting one. Eno Benjamin, a running back out of Arizona State. Could be a reach here or an auto pick. What do you think?
Oh, this was definitely an auto pick. So when we did this mock draft, it was 9 experts and 3 randos. This was one of the randos, and I think he just kind of auto picked out right after he took CeeDee Lamb. So
right.
This guy was on my radar. I would say that he is in a PPR league, might be worth a pick, not this early, but later in the draft, because he never is going to be the lead back for any team. But he did have 42 receptions as a running back in college. That's going to project to be a guy like a Danny Woodhead or something like that. That's basically his ceiling.
Gotcha. Coming in at number 10 is KJ Hamler, wide receiver for Denver, out of Penn State, picked 46th overall. He's coming into a crowded Denver offense. How's that going to play out?
Well, I loved KJ Hamler. I was actually hoping that he would have landed somewhere that isn't like this. Like, he's basically going to be the third option on a team that we haven't really seen past that often. They obviously got a good running back in Melvin Gordon. So I think he's going to be a better real football player than a fantasy player. because he's got the Henry Ruggs take the top off the defense kind of speed. This guy didn't run at the combine, but everybody was projecting him to run in the around 4.2. And it's been documented that John Elway actually timed his runs in the game. And there was a kick return that shows up on his highlights where he took off running, and he timed him on the 40 there. And it was, granted, he's already at full speed, but apparently he ran a 3.9 according to their time. So he's fast. This guy can fly. Yeah. But I think, again, he's going to be one of those guys that's going to help the guys around him more than it is going to help you in fantasy. Now, he's going to have random big games, and it really depends on how well Locke develops. But this is why I like Locke a lot going into this year, is because of guys like KJ Hamler.
All right, moving on. Number 11. I got to get this jersey, I think. Albert Okwuegbunam, and that's how you say it. Tight end for Denver. I don't see much fantasy value coming from this guy unless Noah Fant would miss some time. What do you think?
So I don't like drafting tight ends even in dynasty drafts because they take so long to develop, and by the time you realize whether they are going to be good or not, it's easier to trade for a guy post-hype. So like if we were trading for, the name's escaping me right now, but the kid from Miami, you could get him for pennies on the dollar when where you're drafting him, he was like going to be the next big thing. But this is 3 years in. This is about the time they start to pop off, right? So I'm not going to try to pronounce Albert's name there, but I wouldn't have drafted him there. But he does project to, in 3 to 4 years, be one of those super athletic tight ends. But really at this point, you're just taking shots in the dark. Unless they're being drafted in the first round, so they got all the draft capital and they're going to be, and the team's going to want to introduce them into the offense. I typically just stay away from tight ends altogether.
All righty. Last pick of the second round is Michael Pittman Jr., wide receiver for Indy. 34th overall pick in the draft. Going to be a day one starter. How's that going to play out?
Yeah, no, I think you're right. He's going to be a day one starter. He's brought in to play. He was really the second of the big, like the 6'4", 220 pound. Guy. Yeah, and you hear a lot about those guys that can make amazing catches. This is a guy, no, he can make the amazing catches, but this is a guy who doesn't drop the ball. He makes all the catches, So he only dropped 5 passes out of 176 career passes. So, like, he's never dropping the football. This guy's just he's going to be safe. He doesn't really project as somebody who's going to separate. He's big and strong, so he's going to play the X. He's going to be able to try to take the top off the defense. I don't think he's necessarily fast enough to do that, but he's going to be one of those guys like a Mike Williams, the role that Mike Williams played for Phillip Rivers in San Diego, as one of those guys you could just kind of throw it up to and know he's going to either come down with the ball or nobody's going to come down with the ball.
Right. Well, that wraps up the second round.
All right, sweet. Well, that does it for today's show. Thanks again for sticking with us, watching our shows. If you guys got anything you guys want to see or comments, suggestions, put them in the comments below. And until next time, see ya.